So, welcome everyone to Futureproof Your Career using AI to find the right next job after 50. I'm Janine Vanderburg, CEO of Encore Roadmap, a founder of Changing the Narrative, an anti-ageism initiative, and became really passionate about this project as I continue to hear from people about how they felt that they were being screened out by AI. Last month, we did a program for Encore Roadmap. We did a coffee chat with employment lawyer Gary Phelan talking about some of the recent lawsuits about the age bias that is built into some of the ATS algorithms. Kate Bond, who is joining me today, is an executive career coach, co-chair of Colorado's Workforce Committee of the Colorado Commission on Aging. She was part of that conversation, and there were a lot of people asking questions that we didn't even get to about, okay, if we know that AI and is present in hiring and is showing some age bias, what can we actually do about it if we are in a job seeking category? So I invited Kate to join me today for this program that we're doing. This program is being sponsored by, it's a partnership of Encore Roadmap, my company, Kate Bond, the Colorado Commission on Aging, our good friend Karen Brown from iAging, and also Apex. And all of it is leading up to an in-person job fair on April 30th in Arvada, Colorado. So if any of you are Coloradans from the Metro Denver, we'll be sending out information about that, and you'll definitely want to join us. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start about talking about where we actually are, and I'm calling it the three fundamental truths. One of the things we know right now about the hiring environment is that almost all large companies and professional recruiters are using ATS or automatic tracking systems for screening applications and resumes when they first go to a company. So, of large companies, it's about 98 to 99%. As you go to mid-sized companies, we're probably looking at 90 to 95%. And even smaller companies are starting to get on board, although fewer of them are using automated systems. So the reality is that if you are applying for jobs, the likelihood of running into one of the ATS systems and its algorithms is pretty significant. So that's truth number one. You're going to run into it. Truth number two is that many resumes are hitting what I call a digital wall. And it isn't that people don't have the right qualifications. Many of you have probably applied for jobs for which you know you're extremely qualified for. You have the insight, the experience, and so forth. But you're hitting that wall. Think of the ATS systems as basically people that are programmed to think a certain way. And if what is coming in over the transom doesn't fit the pattern of what they have been programmed to think, it's not that you're going to be automatically rejected, but you are going to go to the bottom of that resume platform. So what a lot of the ATS systems do is not automatically reject, but what they do is they put people in a certain order, and then the human recruiters are only looking at the top ranked applications. So what we're going to talk about today is what can you do to make sure that your resume does not hit that digital wall. And the final, and this is the part that really is both the saddest to me and also what makes me really motivated to do workshops like this and to do something about it. One of the things that we know about AI, and I'm sure this is not news to you, that it actually reflects and reinforces societal biases. One of the most startling studies that I read in the last year was out of the University of Washington. And that study showed two things. That one, the resumes and applications that had white sounding names got selected a lot more time than those that had black sounding names. So that was example racial bias. We also know that the same study showed that male names were preferred over female names and were ranked more highly. So another example of built-in bias. A particular platform that was used by Amazon, there was a discovery that if the word women appeared in it, women's club, women's college, and that kind of thing, that those tended to be screened out. And finally, we know from some of the recent lawsuits, Workday and Eightfold, that AI definitely does reflect a societal age bias. So if we know that's a thing, what can we do about it? And those are the things that we want to have a conversation about today. Does that mean that we shouldn't keep trying to fight age bias? Absolutely not. I am going to fight age bias with my last breath. But knowing that it exists, I also believe that we should do whatever we can to equip ourselves to be better prepared and best prepared to deal with it. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're actually going to start with doing a little inventory of what you bring to the table. And the reason that we're going to do that, you'll hear from Kate soon, that putting things in that we are very proud of. For example, I love saying that I have over 30 years of consulting experience. I'm proud of it. It gave me a lot of skills. It gave me a lot of connections. It gave me a lot of insights. But I know that putting over 30 years of experience is something that's going to bounce me out. So what we're going to do is do a little inventory in this All About You section to flip the script and translate those years of experience into what are the problems that you are especially good about solving, something that then we can be putting into our resumes and our AI systems. Then we're going to talk about 4 ways to beat the bots. So if the bots are there, what can we do in our resumes, our application processes, our interviews, and so forth? And how can we even use AI prompts to beat the bots? So Kate and I are going to go through that. Moving forward, we'll just be sharing some ideas and resources. And what I would like to do, we're going to pause as opposed to just waiting for questions at the end. We're going to pause at the end of every section and ask for questions. And if you would go ahead and put your questions in the chat, because of the number of people we have here, we're just going to read the questions aloud from the chat and go and do our best to respond. If we don't get to some, we will send them out. Our best thinking on responses in a follow-up email. Housekeeping details, keep yourself on mute because of the number of people we have here, and so that we can get through as much as quickly as possible. So we're going to go ahead and start with you. And here is what I would like each of you to do. I'm going to read each question out loud. We'll take about 30 seconds for you to think about each of these and jot down some notes. And the first is, what are 3 problems that you've solved that you're particularly proud of? Think of it, it could be in a career setting, it could be in a business setting, could be in a volunteer setting. But what are those things that these are the problems that I'm really good at? And if you're able to give a specific example, go ahead and do that. Our goal here is to think about the things that give you an unfair advantage. An unfair advantage is a term I used to use a lot in my consulting firm when we would encourage people to think of what are the things that they have that others can't easily duplicate. Think of the problems that you are known for solving as that thing. So take a moment and jot that down. Okay, we're going to go to our next question. What are the things that people come to you for, that you're the go-to person for? It could be family, friends. If they have a question about something, if they need something done, what are those things that people always go to you for? I'm going to jot down some ideas. Okay, next. What kind of industries or types of work have you touched? And again, for many of us, over the course of our careers, we probably touched many. I love the fact that I've consulted for government, I've consulted for private philanthropy, consulted for nonprofits, I've consulted for socially responsible businesses. What have you touched? And finally, if you could do more of one type of work and less for another, what would that look like? As you're thinking about your what's next, what are the things that you really love doing that you'd be like, I would be so happy if I could do this all the time? So, what I would love for anyone to do now is think of maybe an insight that you've gained from that and maybe pop them in the chat. And Kate, if I could ask you to monitor the chat and maybe read aloud a couple of things that come up. The reason that this is important is we're going to be walking through a number of technical things, but I always want you to come back to what is your advantage and how can you layer that into any application process. We'll be sharing a number of AI prompts that you can give, a set of questions that you can give to the AI platform of your choice, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever it is that you use. But keeping in mind, you always want to layer this in. When we ask you to paste in a resume, you're going to want to paste in not only your resume, but what your advantage is.
Hi, everyone. Andrea had 3 problems solved: reduce unnecessary team meetings, listen to my team needs.
I'm hiring Andrea.
Listen to their needs and act on as many solutions as possible and encourage their self-care and ways to grow in their roles. That's a good manager and leader. Carolyn said being with my mother-in-law each day when she was in the hospital for a month before she passed away. I'm so sorry, because I wasn't working and others in the family were, so filling in where needed in the workplace. Andrea says as a career case manager, she's had many different industries and types of work. Carolyn, customer service, banking, hotels, front desk, concierge, banquets, deliveries, call center, and catering, helping people. And I think it says, how do I show my past career highlights without revealing age? They are beyond the 15-year resume limit. We will talk about that.
Right.
Andrea says empowering others.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want all of you to keep this in mind. And this is not a one and done in this workshop. I really want you to, when you're back after this workshop, to spend some time in the next week really thinking this through, because this is a fundamental way of how you want to position yourself beyond the 25 years of experience and 30 years of experience, but really becoming known as the problem solver that can help organizations achieve certain outcomes because you are the go-to in this thing. So we're going to keep going now. I just saw Bridget. Hi, Bridget. And we're going to talk about 4 ways to beat the bots. And by the bots, I mean the applicant tracking systems that are automated, the ATS. And we're going to walk through 4 different strategies that you can use. We're going to pause, ask for questions, because to me, the most important thing is that people fully understand what we are talking about. At the same time that we are going to be going through all of these, and I am putting a link in the chat. Kate is going to be describing basically what you can do in these areas. And I want you to know that we also have in Google Docs, accessible to all of you, written prompts that you can do that will help you accomplish the things that we're talking about in a faster, much more automated way. So in a way, you are using the bot to beat the bot. Okay, so with that, Kate, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit about how people can stop the signals, especially those age signals.
Yeah, I think maybe this slide here. So these are like do's and don'ts. And by the way, I used AI, several different apps, quite a few, to do some research. And I also polled the people, a lot of my clients. I have clients nationally, all generations, including quite a few older adults. And I asked them all what they were experiencing. So I'll share what has not been working and what is working with them. But essentially, and this will be, I think it was Carolyn's question about how do I address work more than 15 years ago. So We will get to the structure of the resume, like that first page, but on that first page, only show the last 10 to 15 years. So I think the max would be 15. If you have graduation dates, so if you have in that profile paragraph at the top, or sometimes we have an objective statement that says over 25 years of doing whatever it is, take out the 25 years and just put the expertise and the experience, like go right to the action, verbs, and description. Remove graduation dates, update titles such as if you have secretary, I'm just picking that one. So any titles that are outdated or from a long time ago don't have current vernacular, they need to be changed. Focus on current relevant skills. So rather than using some descriptors like seasoned and some words like that, focus on what's current, like project management. Several of you listed some things: problem solving, forecasting, strategic planning, and so on. And then most importantly, we'll talk about this content piece, is lead with results and outcomes. So each job should have 3 to 5 measurable bullets. And what I mean by measurable is the statement should be written with what was the challenge, situation, or need, what was the action you took to handle that, and what was the result or the outcome. So there's a format to write each one of these statements and bullets, and it follows that format. Lots of people write a brief phrase, which is like a job description, and it lacks the what and the so what. Again, you'll see some examples of this. I think back to Janine's point of stop defending your 25 or 30 years and put the focus on your accomplishments. So here's an example of a recent older client that I have. They had 25 plus years of operations and strategic operations. And I had him change it to translating and just put expert in. He took the years off and said, expert in translating strategy into measurable outcomes through structured problem solving, performance management systems, and executive decision frameworks. And so the focus, as you can see, is on what he is good at and adept at as opposed to the number of years. So like Janine said, when you go through that exercise that she gave you, your best job is to describe you. How you differentiate yourself is your story, your perspective, and your experience. So that's the do's and don'ts. You want me to go to the next one, or do you?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And I just want to say, we have a resume prompt that is in that list of prompts that I just put in the chat, the access to Google Drive, and you don't need to check it now. You can check it later. But basically, for each thing that we're doing, here are kind of the don'ts and do's, but we also have a prompt that you can plug into any AI system, along with plugging in your resume that says, please review it for all of the following and make all of these changes. You're still going to want to review the output. You're going to want to make sure it reflects you, but it's a way of kind of automating making these changes to expedite it a bit. Kate, you also had some rather strong opinions about formatting, and I'm curious about that because I see many resume writers saying, make it look pretty and all of that thing. And what I see you saying here is make it look ugly. Tell me more.
I see some questions in the chat and we'll get to them. Let me finish this one section here and then we can kind of talk about the do's and don'ts. That first part was the age. The first slide we saw was more of strategic age focus, but this one is formatting. So we've shifted from take out some years and graduation dates to a formatting issue. I see this the most often. I see several of these things quite frequently. So for example, people have tables and text boxes and graphics and fancy fonts and so forth. And AI cannot parse tables and graphics and columns or photos. And then I'll have clients say to me, but isn't it, if my background is creative in this fashion or that, shouldn't I actually include some artwork or graphics in what I'm good at? Actually, recruiters, and I've looked at a lot of resumes as an HR advisor, it is difficult to scan and figure out where their experience and impact comes in. It really doesn't stand out. It just makes it annoying, but the AI will reject it right away. So if you have a creative field, it should be on your website or a portfolio that you add in at some point later. You'd be surprised that headers and footers will kick it out. The AI cannot scan it and will stop when it sees something like that. So for one of my clients, I just type her name in page 2 at the top of page 2. So it's part of the content. Multiple columns, have it just be straightforward text. You're going to see an example here. PDFs are a question mark. I've seen lots of things lately say that do not submit a PDF. Then I've seen some other research that says it's okay sometimes. I think if you can do some research on the company and what their preferences are, or people that you have contacts and can ask their advice or insight, you can ask if it's a PDF. But I had a 28-year-old in California recently who had his resume in a PDF. He was getting rejected quickly within 1 to 2 hours. And I said, why don't you switch it to Word and have the content be straightforward? We'll talk about the text, the font and size and so forth. And then he started getting some responses when he changed it to a Word. So it needs to be saved as a docx, or a text file, not a PDF, not a JPEG. Another thing that I see is sometimes people put unclear date information like January-21, or they'll just put the years 2020 to 2023. You need to put the full month and the year dash to either present or the month and the year. So spell it out. Another thing that I see is some people experiment with headings. My journey or my highlights, the standard titles on the first page need to be your contact information, the word experience, the word skills. So keep those headings straightforward, certification, summary, that type of thing. Another thing that I see, this is also in the top mistakes. If you have a background as, say, a certified public accountant, sometimes people just put the acronym CPA or whatever your acronym is. So the best advice is to spell out the title, like certified public accountant, and then in parentheses, put CPA. Oftentimes people mix fonts, so they might have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So your font needs to be consistent. The most recommended fonts are, you can see it says Arial and Calibri. All the research I saw said not to do Times. It's too squished together. So Cambria, Calibri, Garriman, Verdana, those are the straightforward ones. The other thing that happens a lot is people don't proofread. I sort of have a hawk eye and I catch a spelling or a grammar mistake, a comma or too many commas. So make sure you proofread or else ask someone to do that for you. It'll get rejected by a recruiter and or AI. And then the last thing I would say about formatting is don't assume that every automatic tracking system or ATS is the same. Different companies use different ones. So whatever due diligence you can do to ferret that out, I would highly recommend that.
Okay. And
So
Kate, I'm going to go to the next slide before you go to questions,
sure.
because one of the things that we know is, and this I think has already come up in the chat, there are these two kind of thorny issues when you are only talking about your last, say, 15 years of experience as opposed to 30 years. So what do you do with that early career experience, especially if it's really relevant to something that you're doing now? And what do you do for the very legit reasons? Many of us have had career gaps. And we also know that ATS systems, if there's a gap in the timeline, just kind of null and void it. So kick us out. What do we do about those things?
A lot of us have at least 15 years experience or more. You're going to see a sample of a recent client of mine who has 25 plus years. She took off the last 2 years for a variety of reasons, but she also was doing some consulting. And I think the most important thing here is let's have a mind shift on what a resume is. If some of us on the call are older adults, our thought and view of a resume is that it's a historical record. So I want you to reframe that and think of it as a marketing document. The whole purpose of the resume is to get us an interview, some kind of screening interview, and get inside and access to the job opening itself. So I think the most important thing is curate and figure out what is the most relevant and compelling aspects of your work. My experience with recruiters is they start at the top of your first page and scan just the top 2/3 of your resume. So you're going to see in the sample that I have structured this client's content and experience in a way that it's compelling, it's relevant, it's current, and it really hits the most essential high points of what she brings to the table, the impact, the value that she has. So, as far as the background, she had two things. She summarized her earlier work history on her second page. So, she put, for example, if you were a software engineer, you could put software engineer, company A. If you were a software engineer several times, you would put company A, company B, company C. But if you had three different roles, then you could put the role and the company, and then maybe a phrase or a sentence about that experience. I had another woman retire in Austin, Texas recently at 60. Her career coach said, don't put any dates on the second page. Just put your last 15 years on that first page and describe the work experience on your second page, but don't date it. So I think the most important thing is to find what's relevant and describe it on the first page, and then have a summary statement. So this client that you're going to see has been in her own consulting firm for 2 years, which is the career gap. She described it as self-employed and gave a strong, impactful sentence or two about what she has been doing. In fact, I think she put 2 bullets under hers. So you do have to address it. Recruiters will ask, they will notice it. If you have been doing family caregiving or something that you are concerned about and think that you might get a negative reaction, I think it's much better to be honest and make sure you state what you have been doing and for what period of time. But you're going to have to tailor the narrative and reframe it. And if you do have recent work experience, maybe some projects, make sure that whatever you're looking at applying to, that you tailor the language to what you're interested in going forward.
Okay, so Kate, I'm going to go ahead and stop the sharing so that you can share the resume example. Then we'll answer questions, and then we will come back to our next item. How's that sound?
Sounds good. But let's see.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and share?
Let me see. Yeah.
And meanwhile, if you want to keep putting questions in the chat, everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody can see this.
Yep, we're good.
So this is her before first page of her resume. So you see how large her name is, the font. That's kind of a no-no. And then she has her information distributed, scattered and randomly on the page. So her thought is, this is the person that has 25 years in her experience, cybersecurity. She lowered it to 20 in her paragraph here, but she actually has 25 because she dates all of her companies on her second page. So she puts contact information, skills, and so forth, education on the left. So what she's kind of done is created several columns, which ATS will kick this out right away. And the other thing that she did here is she described her work experience in a paragraph form as opposed to bullets. And so many of the systems will reject that, but also recruiters don't want to read these paragraphs. They want to see your experience in bullets. So and I just changed her resume.
Okay. Do you want to show the after? The after.
Yes. No, let's see. Did it come
Yep,
up to me?
it did. So now what you need to do is
Yeah.
scroll so that say the beginning.
Okay. So here's the format, and there is a PowerPoint slide on this. So your contact information's at the top. It's a very clean, it flows. ATS loves this. Some people put their city and state up top. I personally coach my clients not to put their address or their location. That's totally up to you and decision that you have to make. I think it's should be very straightforward. Your name, cell phone, email, LinkedIn. Now, the next thing I did, there's one line on this whole document, which is separates her contact information from the profile. I'm calling it a profile. It could be called summary. We put this paragraph in here that is what I call the professional profile. This right here, this content right here, this whole section is what I was talking about that needs to be impactful and relevant and pertinent. So you've got to do a lot of thinking about what is your expertise? What's the value that you bring? By the way, this first paragraph is kind of like a 1-minute commercial, which is really important in answering an interview question about tell me about yourself. So she has several jobs that she wants to apply for, and we tailored this first paragraph to those jobs. In addition, we looked at all of the competencies and skill sets critical for that position. And so you're going to see this list of skills here, leadership coaching, all the way over to risk management and so forth. These are the top things. I fed 1 or 2 cybersecurity high-level positions into AI, and it spit back out these top skills and competencies. And then her professional experience. Here's her career gap here. See, so it's almost 2 years, about 1.5 years. So we played around with the title. We created 2 bullets. One thing that I think is effective is to put a tagline here. So we have a tagline underneath Virtual Chief Information Security Officer, explains kind of the overarching purpose. And then we have a tagline under this company that she was working for. So you can see she has 2 bullets here, 5 down here, and then she has this other position she had before she was a CISO. This is the experience that recruiters and ATS is looking for. So it only goes back to 2018, which is a good chunk of work history. And then you see how on page 2, I've typed in her name and page 2 at the top, no header, footer. Here's the last corporate position that she had. Again, a tagline, the bullets. And here's her earlier career history. No dates, just the title of each position that she had and the company, and then a major sort of description on what her role there and her purpose. By the way, all of the content in these 3 past jobs that she had tied to the position that she's looking for. We put her education here. We took off dates. We put awards that she's received with the years, all of them fairly recent. And then advisory boards. So there's different things you can do on this second page, but you can see how the second page is supplemental, if you will, whereas this first page is what is so critical as far as the meat and her expertise and what she brings to the table.
Kate, I'm going to ask you to look in the chat and start. Let's go through a few questions before we go to our next session. And I'm mindful we only have about 20 minutes left. So we're going to want to go through these questions quickly, Kate.
Let's see. Why doesn't this have the months in the dates of employment? That's what she's choosing not to do. I'm going to recommend that she does add those. Somebody said, I love the second page. You solved my problem. Good. I feel good about that. It's not in bullets. Just her bullets are in her job description. Yeah, the first page didn't have the bullets right. Yep, another one caught the month and year. Oh, let's see. I don't see any more questions unless
I think so. Anne is asking, it takes time to look for a new job. How do you frame that time if you're not a consultant? Any suggestions on that?
How do you frame the time if you're not a consultant?
When you're actually job searching.
You need to figure out, what are you doing with your time? Is it volunteering? Is it caretaking? Are you learning any new skills, any projects that you're overseeing? Maybe it's household budgets and family caretaking. Whatever it is that you're doing, you can describe it in a way where there's a contribution. And again, somebody said trainings and workshops, professional development. Think about those things and how to describe it. When in doubt, plug some of that into AI, Chat GPT or Claude. I just redid my LinkedIn profile, plugging it into Chat GPT and Claude, and kind of took a combo of each one just to see how it would turn out.
And I think the important thing is that the ATS, if there is a gap in dates, basically just that nulls and voids. So it creates these issues within the ATS. So you want to fill it in with something. And that's really important. Kate, let's go now to the idea of mirroring the map. So we've talked about we want to stop those, both the age signals and we want to stop the formatting signals that don't allow ATS to read what we're going to do. But there are certain things that are really critical to do that we need to do to make sure that what our application is mirroring exactly what the ATS is looking for. Kate, do you want to walk us through this one first? You talked already a little bit about the structure.
Yes. I've been doing this format for at least 10 to 15 years, and I get a lot of good results with my clients on that flow. And you saw that on Jane Doe's final copy there. So I think we've hit that and they've actually gotten to see it.
Okay.
So
Let's keywords.
Yeah. So briefly, the job description is your cheat sheet. So you really need to look at it carefully. It's going to give you descriptions and priorities and requirements and things that are essential for success for the job. So I would look through the area that says key responsibilities or requirements and qualifications. And then I would glean from those, what are the top keywords that you need to put in your resume? And then I would try to take 60 to 70% of what you discover and decide is essential, that's relevant, and then place some of those words or many of those words in your sections of your resume. So you need to put it in that profile, that first paragraph at the top. You need to insert some of those in the skill sets, that middle section, and then also your work experience. So profile, summary, skills, and experience. Shoot for 60 to 70%. The other thing is customize each resume. I know this is a pain in the backside, but if you don't customize each one, it will. And I have a lot of clients who say, I'm not going to do that. And then I say, well, you're probably not going to make it past muster. But the goal is to get through the ATS to a human. So if you see project management mentioned 4 and 5 times, make darn sure that is in your resume in a couple different places. And don't paraphrase project management by saying managing projects. Make sure you say project management.
One of the fun things about working on this with Kate is she was providing all this insight from her career coach, and I was turning them into prompts. So here is a prompt that you can use. This is in that Google Sheet that I shared with you, and what you're going to want to do with it is basically you'll see the Google Sheet with all the prompts, and you'll make a copy so you can manipulate it and do it what you want with it. But basically, it's to reverse engineer the exact language that the ATS is going to be scanning for. So what you do, you look toward the top, it says, here is the job posting. You paste in the full job posting. And then you're asking, list every hard skill, soft skill, certification, and tool mentioned in this posting, even the ones that are buried in the middle of the paragraphs. Rank them in order of likely importance to the ATS. The ones that are repeated the most are going to be the highest priority. As Kate said, identify the exact phrases to use verbatim and not synonym. So for example, if it says client relations and you have a great background in customer service, don't say customer service, say client relations. Flag any kind of hidden requirements, the things the posting implies but doesn't explicitly state. And then what you want to do is you're asking the AI platform. So when you're flipping the script with AI, you're asking them to give a checklist that you can use to compare against the posting. But you can also then take whatever it provides, paste your resume in and say, flag all the areas where I should be putting in keywords that are relevant and that kind of thing. So again, we've got a handful of prompts that you can use, and it's a great way to be able to customize your resume every single time because you're able to put the position description in, your resume in, have them match up. Okay. Questions on that before we go to our next? Kate, do you see any?
Janine, are we getting the slides sent to us?
Here's what you're going to get. You're going to get the slides. You're going to get a recording of this. It'll take me a couple of days to edit, so that may not come out till Monday. And then you will get a link to the Google Drive that has prompts. It has those before and after examples that Kate sent and a couple of other things as well.
And then Rosemary asked, do you find all major AI platforms perform equally well and similarly with the prompts? Or are some platforms a little better for this? Personally, my favorite thus far is Claude.
Yeah.
And maybe other people can put some input in here as well.
Yeah. I really like Claude and especially Opus 4.6 because I think it's really good at analysis. I personally use a platform called Magi that includes a bunch of the platforms. So within Magi, it has ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and about 30 other platforms. So sometimes I like to mix and match and see like who gives what I consider a better result. I think the most important thing is that you need to verify. The stuff comes out and you want to check and make sure that what it's producing is what you know to be true. We're going to talk about amplifying your value. So you've already kind of optimized your resume. You've got it in the right format and that kind of thing. You've made sure that all the keywords are in there. And the same keyword research that you use for your resume is also really, really helpful for LinkedIn, where recruiters very often are looking at your LinkedIn profile, right? So you want to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn profile match. So you've got all the basics down. This is where you want to go back, though, to your Advantage worksheet and compare it to the specific job postings that you're looking at and thinking, which of these problems that I am uniquely capable to solve are going to be relevant to this employer? And make sure you're dropping those into those 3 to 5 bullets under each position that Kate talked about. So you're demonstrating to the employer, it's not just the experience. This is the value that I bring. These are the problems that I can solve. I can't anticipate enough or emphasize enough this idea of highlighting modern skills, especially AI skills and accomplishments. So a really must do in my mind is following LinkedIn every few months issues reports on here are the top skills that employers are looking for. And for the last year, AI skills have been absolutely at the top, along with some of the softer skills, communication skills that we know as older adults we very often uniquely have. But you want to highlight those modern skills, make sure that you are any kind of AI skills that you've developed, any kind of analytical skills using AI, any AI projects, make sure that you are highlighting those in your skills and competencies and that you're not putting under skills things Word Perfect or even Microsoft Word or things that people don't care about anymore. I will also send a link to some of the latest LinkedIn reports on current in-demand skills, because the more that you can be matching that to what an employer is looking for and making sure that's in your resume, the stronger that you're going to come out. And Kate already mentioned this, but to get through the ATS, you do want to customize your resume each and every time so that it's not an issue of automatic rejection or not. You don't want to be in the bottom 50%. You want to be in the top 5%, right? As ATS ranks them. And customizing your resume can have you do that. And then finally, we're going to talk about, okay, so you've done all this resume, you've done all the things. How do you hit it home? And part of it is now you're invited for an interview, but you discover they want an AI interview. They want you to talk to a bot. Kate, walk us through how we talk to a bot.
Okay. Andrea asked, where can we get the Advantage worksheet? Is that going to be on the Google?
Yes.
Amit said free AI platforms provide limited resources. Yes, I've seen that. Claude Opus 4.6 is premium subscribed. Okay. Here's another client just recently, older adult, had a cute, neat graphic box of his skills on his first page. was getting rejected over and over again. We changed his resume to that simple, straightforward format. He got an interview 2 days ago, and his first interview is an AI screening. So I just wanted to read the instructions that he got really quick. It says what to expect. And by the way, his interviews through a platform called Spark Hire. And the bullets were record your answers at a time that works best for you. I would disagree with that, but just find a quiet, well-lit place. Join from desktop or mobile. You can pause and come back anytime before the deadline. And before recording starts, use the practice question to test your setup and see how it works. But the interesting thing about AI interviews is, this is not a dynamic back and forth. It has a timer, it has a prompt. There's no feedback. You can't read someone's personality and body language. So the first thing I tell my clients is think about your competence. What's the difference between what you bring to the table and your competence? Put the emphasis on your competence in what you bring and try to let go of this camera comfort and presence. These are increasingly more common. So it's really wise to record yourself and see how you look and sound ahead of time. What I tell my clients to do is memorize their 1-minute commercial, and it follows a framework of intro, body, and conclusion. And in the body, have their top 3 gifts or talents or strengths, put it in an acronym, and then you can put a little sticky note somewhere. So the brain kind of remembers that acronym, and then you can explain each one. But there are basic bots, there are basic avatars, and then there's some pretty sophisticated ones. And I've heard results of both of these. The basic response or screening interview goes to the hiring manager, and the sophisticated one analyzes your response, your facial expressions, your eyes. And so I did have one client who had some notes and was reading his answers to the questions, and the avatar saw his notes and deleted him out of the pool because they knew he was reading his response instead of being his spontaneous self. Dress for it, record your answers in a quiet, well-lit room, look at the camera. But I said, you've got to stay in your body and keep the focus on your competence, be yourself, and don't worry about the discomfort of a camera.
And Kate, I'm looking and I'm seeing Chris Henry right under you on my screen. Chris, I'm thinking that we should have you on to speak to our community on a great camera presence, given all of your experience with that. I think it's really hard. I've had to do pre-recorded interviews sometimes where I'm just looking and literally I make sure I have somebody else in the room that I can maintain eye contact with because I don't have that gift of being able to look at the camera and that kind of thing. I also wanted to note that in our prompt guide, we've got AI interview prompt to generate questions that you might be likely to be asked, given who the company is, the type of role it is, what your experience is, and that kind of thing. So go ahead and play around with the prompts because I think generating some ideas of questions that you're likely to have, it also helps reassure you doing these.
Janine, the number one problem question
Can pay you back.
is tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah.
People
So,
ramble.
yeah. And it's interesting to me, right? Because it's like, well, what do you want to know about myself? And so I think your idea always of having that 1-minute commercial is a good idea. If everyone can mute themselves, because I'm hearing something in the background.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The final thing to get around the bots is to go ahead and map your connections, try to connect to as many people as you can. I have people often reach out to me and say, do you know someone here and there? And I'm always happy to make an introduction. And that way that your resume, as opposed to just going into the ATS system, will have the attention of a human at some point. I was at a career conference where the recruiters were saying, for the most part, if they get that sort of personal call or email or message, they are more likely to go and look into all the resumes that have come in, even if a resume wasn't ranked in the top 5%. So one of the things that I really encourage everybody to do is go ahead and map your connections. LinkedIn did some studies on this a few years ago. that actually most jobs are not found through our besties, but they're found through second or third tier connections, people that peripherally know us. So going ahead and mapping them. And again, I've got a prompt in the prompt guide that has suggested messages that you can use to try to connect with different people at companies that you're applying for. But go ahead and use those prompts.
Amit asks, how do you filter ghost jobs? They seem to be more prevalent.
Okay, here's what we're going to do right now. I've got a couple of slides to get through. And then, Kate, if you're able to stay on, and Amit, if you're able to stay on, we can do that because I'm conscious we have 4 minutes left. And I want to make sure that we cover what we plan to. So if Amit, if you're okay with that. And Kate, I know you have some thoughts on that. We had thought we might even do a whole other workshop on that. 3 steps that I want you to take moving forward. Use AI. We've given you some starter prompts. They're not the be all and end all. They're a starter, but use AI to discover new roles that you can use where you can use your skill and talent. You need to learn how AI is being used in your industry and then develop case examples of how you use it. So what kind of functions are being automated? Are people using it for analysis? Are they using it for vibe coding? Where are people using AI? And make sure that you are current on those kind of skills and understand how they work. Highly recommend that you create your own customized AI learning plan. If you feel like you are not up to speed yet, start by playing around with some of the prompts that we are giving you. But a great prompt to give AI as well is, I need to learn about how AI is being used in my industry, insert industry. What are some of the ways that someone in my position would be expected to use AI? Please create a 30-day learning plan for me to learn to use this so that you're becoming familiar with the things that you need to become familiar with. So here are the tools that you're going to have in the Google Workspace. You are going to have a complete set of AI prompts. You are going to have the before and after example that Kate put together of a resume. And then these are Google recommended interviewing practice tools. So one of the things that I discovered when learning about how these AI interviews work is that there are a number of now online interview practice tools where you can practice talking to a bot. I have not personally used them, so that's why I'm calling them Google recommended, but I have a whole list of Google recommended, and you might play around with some of those. I'm going to go back to questions and Kate. And so before I do that, Kate, before you answer this question, I want to thank all of you for being here and also for supporting each other and being willing to be kind of on the cutting edge of all of this stuff. Thank you for listening to us. You will be getting a boatload of stuff from us, again, most likely on Monday, because I do want to edit this recording. And Kate, I'll hand it to you. What do we do about those ghost jobs that seem to be overwhelming, especially LinkedIn?
My experience with it is it's hard to tell what is legitimate and what is not. I tell all my clients to try to find a different window or door into the organization. That could be going on your LinkedIn or their company website, but you've got to find access to people inside the company to see if you can get some attention. Sometimes employee referrals work if someone who knows someone. So we go back to the networking people connection piece. If you don't have control over it and influence, then there's not a lot you can do about that ghost position. I would move on. I always ask myself, what's a low impact use of my time and what's a high impact use of my time in my job search? And people, connections, referrals, responses from emails, responses within LinkedIn are always a high impact use of your time. So don't knock your head against the wall pursuing things that are ghost. It could be a waste of time.
And Kate, can I add, because I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I swear it's bots reaching out to me all the time, direct messaging. And I've been self-employed for over 50 years. So I am not looking for a job, but I will get those people that are saying, oh, we have the perfect job for you. And all you need to do is click this. And then you look at the email or you click on their profile. And very often they have 2 connections. You look for them in the company. They're not associated with the company. So I think that when you see something like that, I think that there are some immediate steps that you can take to, I'm going to quote Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. So go ahead and verify that the people are who they say they are.
I have an MBA student at University of Texas who started his own business and he created his own bot to do his executive admin work. I was just talking to him last week. His bot tells him what his schedule is, do this, do that. Here's an email, answer this. And I can't picture that myself, so I want to see it.
I want one of those bots. It is now 1:01 Mountain Time, and it's 1 minute after we said we would conclude. So I want to thank you all so much. If there are some additional questions, Kate and I will scan the chat. We will go ahead and get our best responses to you. I want to appreciate all of you. Go ahead and follow Kate and me on LinkedIn so that you can find out just additional things that we'll have coming up. And Chris, I am going to reach out to you to see if you'll do a program on how we look into the camera and talk to people that don't exist. All right. Thanks all so much. If you're close to the weekend, have a great weekend. Take care, everybody.
There are a couple more questions here.
Yep.
How do you optimize your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. So I think we need to do a separate workshop on that, or get Vivica von Rosen is doing an in-person workshop as part of our Colorado Commission on Aging. I'm going to see if we can get her to do that virtually so that everybody can participate, because it's a 1-hour answer or a 2-hour answer. And so I think anything that we would say now would be insufficient.
But I did feed some highlights of myself into Claude to see what it would spit back on my LinkedIn profile. But you have, it's data in, data out. So you've got to feed it the right expert.
Right. And the reason I'm punting to Vivica is Vivica's little title on LinkedIn was the LinkedIn expert. And so this is what she knows inside and out. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.